On this video, we'll look at how to make people mad and at the same time get 100,000 views on your content. Stock price, Joe Rogan versus Twitter, Victor's new Upsell. I'm Baron, I'm the founder of Salesman.org, co-host of this show. John Antonio, how's it going, my friend?
Well, Baron, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you. And what did you do over New Year's? Did you work? Did you relax? What'd you do, man?
Well, the last 20, I'm going to take a break. I need to take some time off. Slightly burned out. I've done, I wouldn't say that I've not created any content, but I've not really put my feet up. We've got the studio with a new streaming setup. As I say this, I can see that my background is wonky, so the camera off on tilt. But other than that, amazing new streaming setup. The ability to pull all kinds of new stuff in for the audience. And so hopefully, even though it was not necessarily the most chilled of Christmases, hopefully there'll be some great new content for the audience in the new year.
By the way, I love the intro, by the way. That's a nice graphic intro. So well done. Well done. That's all Will Barrett. Well done, man.
Dude, you just wait. You don't even know what's coming. He didn't even know what's going to hit him in this show with animations and cool stuff. Victor, I told you, it's cost me thousands. But I'm super invested.
By the way, I love when you said you spent money like thousands and your voice goes really high on the octave. That's when I know it's a lot of money.
Dude, like someone at LinkedIn, how much did your studio cost? I started and then I just stopped because it made me feel slightly ill how much we've spent on equipment here. But it's an investment. I'm all in on content this year. Nothing else, no traveling, no training other than what we've got and that we are refining slowly over time. All in on podcasts, this show, and some solo content as well. No more censoring, no back my thoughts on things. I think there's a real opportunity in the space at the moment, and we'll touch on this with some LinkedIn content in a second I posted that got people very mad, but got a ton of attention. I think there's a real opportunity at the moment to grab some kind of mind share in the sales space because there's so many people just talking absolute crap.
Will, unplugged, unhinged, and unfiltered. One of those things, right? Well, at least one of those.
Anything else? Victor, how are you, sir? Are you good? Have you got any New Year's resolutions? Have you got anything you want to share before we jump into the show?
No, I made one New Year's resolution. It's a real simple one. One word, gratitude. And that is to be more grateful throughout the year. So I'm just going to remind myself that's going to be my G word for the year, gratitude. And I think I came upon that by, sometimes you just got to stop and appreciate what you have, Will. Or too often we're chasing the next opportunity, the next, the bite at the apple. And I'm just saying, you know what, mentally, I'm going to start appreciating a little more gratitude for the year. I suggest that to everybody out there.
Very good. I like to, I've talked about this on the show before, on the Salesman podcast especially, walk the dog every morning on the way. I can't find a nice loop that we do. So we walk, maybe this is ubiquitous across dog owners. I walk to a poo bin, get rid of his poo, and then I walk straight back. But on the way there, I just focus on things that I'm grateful for. And on the way back, I focus on things that I want. We've got to do that. I need to build up my motivation and drive to get rocking and rolling on that morning. And that really focused me and sets me up for the day. Just that little bit of gratitude, and then going back to the real world and getting. I like
that 1-2. Gratitude and goals. Gratitude and goals. I like that 1-2 punch.
Cool. Well, with that, Victor, let's jump into some sales news. And why don't you lead us off with this first topic?
Salesforce, my favorite topic. Their stock has fallen. Has the empire crumbled finally? Is it beginning to crumble? So why Salesforce.com fell over 6% today, which was yesterday. The cloud software pioneer got an analyst downgrade to start 2022. Happy New Year, Salesforce. The article is by Nicholas Rossolililo. Yeah, I hope I said that right. But anyway, shares of the cloud computing giant software were down 6.4% yesterday. It builds on the losses the stock suffered during the final months of 2021, following news of the Omicron virus variant and subsequent tech sell-off. Salesforce is now down. This was interesting, Will. 18% from its all-time high reached in November. That's quite a drop. So the dip is due to Carl Kierstead of UBS downgraded shares from buy to neutral. That sends shockwaves through the sales engagement CRM platform industry. What do you
Is
think
it a? Do you think we will have a ripple effect? I might be very quiet on the mic here. I think I'm fine. From who do we have a comment from? Harry saying that there's an issue with the mic, but I can't comment on what the issue is if there is one, and we can fix it live in real time. But yeah, a turning point in that for over a year now we've been doing This Week in Sales, and for over a year we've been talking about the potential, the opportunity for to be a bubble in the sales technology industry. If Salesforce starts to wobble slightly, because who knows what this really means. I'm not clever enough to do analysis and on the actual value of stocks versus the perceived value versus how the market deflates, inflates, and affects everything within it. But could this be a signal that perhaps this sales tech boom might be coming to a bit of a head?
My initial thought was that this might be, not to use a virus term here, but the flattening of the curve, right? In other words, there's so many people jumping into the market that maybe it's harder to grow your revenue share. But here's the second part of the story. It's only one part of the story. A couple of days before this analyst moved them from buy to neutral, another group, 12 analysts, got together and they expect Salesforce. Now, notice the key word here, Will. They expect Salesforce to post a $7.2 billion in sales for the current fiscal quarter. Now, here's what's interesting. 12 analysts got together and says, no. They're going to make more money. They're going to sell more, but the report doesn't come out till February. They're saying that year over year, there's going to be a 24.2% growth in their numbers reported. So two different stories here. One analyst saying, don't go to buy, go to neutral. And then you got some other analysts, just it happens to come out a couple of days before it went to neutral, right? That no, they're going to grow. They're going to grow. So I don't know where this is going. I just thought it was interesting because this is why you and I are always confused, and maybe our audience is that, on one side you're getting a downgrade, and on the other side you're saying, no, they're going to grow by 24%. So I don't know what's real, but I think this will be interesting.
Is that just in general,
back in
Victor?
February? Watch.
You're not sure what's real in life, just in general. Dream.
Who's living in a dream?
So where this gets somewhat complicated, I guess, is, and again, I'm not bright enough or informed enough to talk about this. People invest in stocks and shares to make a profit. So if Salesforce is just on a nice, steady climb over time, maybe that's not as exciting to an investor as a company that's just about to dip, it's just about to boom, it's just about to go up and down and swap and change. So it could be as simple as that. They could just be too healthy for their own good. They're not attracting long-term investment, as opposed to people will go for those kind of like weekly, monthly influxes and try and like game the system.
Yeah, you know what I think I'm going to do though, Will? I don't know if I can say this publicly, but I'm going to say it publicly anyway. I think I'm going to buy a few shares.
Sure. I
think we'll buy a few shares just to kind of just track a few shares and just see what's happened. And then maybe I can come back and I told you so, Will, you should have invested, or you'll tell me, Victor, you fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Why did you do that? So anyway, moving on, Will, I want to talk about this article here that talks about, here's the title, 75% of B2B sales organizations will use AI-guided selling by 2025. Well, we're talking that's just around the corner. So based on a Gartner study, it's a study they did titled Sales Predicts 2020, Predicts, I guess that's the title of it, for 2022, the digital evolution of B2B sales. 1, sales training will evolve to include more critical thinking skills, particularly in data literacy. How would you comment on that? Will, what do you think they mean? Like, how is a salesperson, I mean, I get the critical thinking skills piece, but now in terms of data literacy, how do they do that when everything's on a dashboard? I didn't really understand what that meant.
It could be very literal in that there's tons of data. It's all 43% of your emails doing this, and this doesn't mean anything. Maybe the data needs to be transformed. It needs to be communicated more effectively into actionable insights or things that can be managed by individual salespeople who deep data analysis. Maybe we should be hiring people to do that for salespeople to support them within the sales space. But maybe it's very literally more effective communication of the data itself.
I would think, I mean, this is where I kind of got a little confused, and maybe I'm just not understanding it fully, is that if it is AI driven, which means that the reason we have AI is AI equals prediction. Tell me what to do next. What's the next best move, right? Next best action. And so why do I need to be thinking critically when the system, with its massive ability to aggregate, analyze, and predict, why should I have to interpret any data, and why do I have to worry about data literacy? That's where I was a little confused. I'm like, I don't know if I get that. But the next thing was sales playbooks should clearly define how to use AI tools in daily sales activities. I don't even know where to go with that one. Sometimes when I read some of these comments, sometimes, well, I'm going, okay, what does that mean? Sales playbooks should clearly define how to use AI tools in daily sales activities.
Could it be, Victor, as we've talked about on
here.
the show in the past, in fact, that there's a lot of sales technology out there that is just pumping crap at salespeople that they don't bother using. And now, I guess Gartner's a slightly more independent third party. If this was a sales technology company saying, hey, you need to clearly define your own sales playbooks. It's not our responsibility to communicate data and insights effectively. You need to put it in your playbooks. I guess Gartner are slightly more neutral in the middle in this, but it could be that just sales teams are investing in all of this. It looks great on paper. You're a sales VP, sales, and you go, right, we need to increase sales 20% this year. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to invest in that. That looks great in a boardroom meeting as you're spending your budget. But if no around, obviously it's completely ineffective, it's completely pointless. And so maybe this is the pushback on that of, hey, these tools aren't clever enough just to do the work for you. We need organizations, we need to organize internally to put it into playbooks step by step so salespeople can actually make use of.
You reminded me in what you said about the salesperson has to kind of play middleware of the book by Justin Michaels and Tony Hughes, that tech-powered sales book I like so much. And that is that it says right now the technology isn't there, that between the actual software and execution, there still has to be the middleware, which is the salesperson. And maybe that's what they're saying, that the sales playbook should serve as the interface between what the machine is saying, so to speak, and what we actually do. But here's a quote. It says, sellers can no longer exclusively rely on intuition-based selling to push a deal over the finish line, says Steve Reitberg, Senior Director Analyst, Gartner Sales Practice. Steve, thank you for that powerful insight. Anyway, quote, I continue, tomorrow sellers must learn to use data today to effectively manage their sales cycle as the use of information will become more critical to their success over time. Thank you again, Steve, for being the master of the obvious and stating what we already know. I expect more from Gartner, more insightful comments to kind of make me think more deeply. Am I being too hard on this guy already?
Are you okay, Victor? This is like the first show of the year, and already that was pretty aggressive to just like a comment. The dude's trying to help.
I don't think that was aggressive. I don't think I was aggressive. By the way, if you're watching us, wherever you're watching us, tell me if I'm being aggressive. Tell me if I should pull back a little bit. When people state the obvious, I'm like, I hope I'm not paying you, hundreds of $1,000s a month just to state the obvious. Listen, sellers can no longer exclusively rely on intuition-based selling to push a deal over the finish line. Now, notice there's some qualifiers in that statement. Sellers can no longer exclusively is the qualifying word. Well, thank you. I thought it was either one or the other. I was just confused. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I don't think I'm being tough on these guys, but anyway, I think it's interesting that when we talk about 75% of B2B sales organizations will move to AI-guided selling, I'm also thinking that a lot of that will be self-guided. I wonder if that's in the report as well. By self-guided, we go on Amazon today, we buy our own stuff. We don't need to talk to a salesperson. As the AI systems become more intelligent and can recommend things, maybe we won't need that, because that's also kind of dovetailing with the number of B2B salespeople going down. And so what are your thoughts on that?
It's not a good system unless it's doing it seamlessly in the background. That's the whole point of it. Otherwise, you might as well just hire a couple of people to do the job that the AI is supposedly doing, and then get them to update a dashboard. There's very little sales technology that is doing things proactively in real time to help you in the moment. They might be recording data in real time and giving it you after the fact. And a person could do that. The difference Gong and someone sat on the other end of the phone making notes and giving you feedback is that Gong, like 50,000 calls across Microsoft or a massive company all at once via servers. The individuals and their expertise are being replaced by CPUs within server racks. So with that, it should the default should be that it's doing it passively without you even realizing that you're being nudged one way or another. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I would like, as you were saying that, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be, can I paint the rosy picture now for AI?
Please
Let's take Gong, right? Gong analyzes 50 million calls. And then the AI actually writes the playbook for you, writes out the steps and the cadences, actually fills out the scripts for you, let's say, your email sequence, for your call sequence. Everything is filled out. I think that's what we need to get to. That's when I'll say AI is real for sales. When it can do all of that, well, then I'll buy it. We'll reach what I call sales singularity. Oh, I think I came up with a new phrase right there, man. Sales.
And all of this technology can do the sale on your behalf, and salespeople are just
bye-bye. Yeah, that's it.
We talked about this before. Let's start the year by asking you the question again. Is that something that you think will happen? Not entirely, because if I'm going to go buy a Rolex, I probably want to speak to a person. I'm just about to be ripped off on obviously the technology, the mechanism of Rolex, incredible, really fascinating. But you're being ripped off on a product that's, for whatever reason, we won't go into the value of things. But I want to speak to a looked after, and I want to be kind of made to feel great about this purchase, right? So, barring a few instances like that, in general, do you think that there could be a sales singularity where AI can just deal with all of the inbound, generate outbound, and through videos, customized avatars, things that we talked about on the show in the past, can this just be done on our behalf?
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to slice this one, and I know this is going to be a little controversial. If you disagree with me, just wait till I kind of lay out my argument here. Let me lay out my case. If we were to split the field of B2B sales for now just into, let's say, products and then systems. You can also include services you want with systems. But let's say product and systems. On the product side, it is an eventuality that we will reach sales singularity, or you won't need salespeople. It'll be rare on the product side. But let's say you're trying to put together a system. Let's say, I don't know, you need to create your own data center for your own company. I think you can't do that with the AI because there's too many variables involved in depending on, for example, in a data center, you really have to look at space, energy efficiency, so forth, and so that would be totally different. So I would slice it like that thinly and say product side, sales singularity. System side, maybe service side. I don't think so.
I think I can agree with that. I don't think there's much that some kind of. I'm trying to start the year off on a new thought, Victor. I want to.
It's going to feel so weird when you don't, but okay.
I'm only teasing. We're definitely going to argue when we get into Culture Corner in a second. But yeah, are we fair to wrap up on that point? I think that's fair. I think a lot of low-level sales is just going to be wiped off the market. A good example, I'm looking at property at the moment to move this studio into, but a long-standing look, but we've just had, we can talk about it off, I don't know how appropriate it is for the show, but we've just had like a bit of a cash influx into the business through some deals that we've just done over Christmas. And so our budget is higher than it ever has been. So I don't need to guide me through a purchase. Maybe I need an expert in the fact that we've got to sign contracts and there's all the legal side of things. But I don't need a salesperson to twist my arm into viewing different properties and office spaces and things and to try and make that happen. That's done. That's done by pictures on the internet. I know before I turn up to the place whether it's going to be great, shit, fantastic, or in between. That's a whole level of salespeople just wiped out there. And obviously this is a B2B sale. I'm talking about commercial office space here. But more typically we might be in this instance talking about B2C sales. But I think that's the first step of a lot of salespeople being wiped out. And you've got to find a way to add value. If you can't do some of the contracts, if you can't take me to places and show me property that isn't on the market yet because you've got great contacts within the industry, then you're just done in that space.
Yeah, I think using your example of real estate is really good. If you're just moving into the property, right, then the actual property is just, for lack of a better phrase, a product, because you're just going to move in. There's no special requirements necessary. But let's say that you decide to buy this property. Well, because you want to set up, I don't know, a data center just for all the video because you're going to create some massive video monster conglomerate, right? Then you might need power requirements, different power requirements, ventilation for heat and things of that nature. And that's where a salesperson, in this case, a real estate agent that knows these things might be actually useful. I know it's an extreme example, but that's how I would slice that pie.
I don't think that's extreme. And I'm not sure how many. I've worked with some right numpties in the past few weeks, Victor, to try and look at property. I don't could have an interesting conversation about kind of power supplies, three-phase this, or a video production that. So yeah, with that, Victor, should we jump into Culture Corner?
Oh, yes. Let's get into it. Okay, I think this is going to get a little interesting here. Anyway, I wanted to start out with this article here because I'm definitely dying to get into your topic real quick here. So let me just go through this real quick. The title of the article is Hustle Culture. Hustle Culture is facing an existential crisis with millennials. Millennials are wondering whether finding meaning in their job is a fruitless pursuit. Now, this was an article written by Aaron Carson, and he talks about how, again, let me define millennial groups. And anybody between 1981 to 1996, you're a millennial. 78% of millennials in the Harris poll conducted said they were interested in switching their jobs. That's 80%. Not really surprising, is it? Is it, Will?
80% of millennials conducted said they were interested. So it depends how it's all phrased. I'm interested in switching things to earn more money and do bigger things. It doesn't mean that I'm capable of doing it or that there's an opportunity in front of me.
Well said. Well said. Well spliced. And then millennial managers are more likely, 42%, to say they're burnt out. They're burnt out than other generations, according to the MetLife study. I think burnout is real, by the way. I think burnout is real. I think burnout. Would you agree with the statement that, because I get this feeling, it's anecdotal, finger to the wind type of proof, is that I think people are working more now from home than they were when the actual office. And let me just add a little clarification and I want your feedback. When you're in the office, there's some socializing time, right? Some time to kind of, water cooler chat, maybe lunch, maybe after work drink. There's some relaxed conversations going on in there, where it seems like the virtual stuff is meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. It seems like people are putting in more work. What are your thoughts on that, Will?
I think, I don't know that's to be true. As a hunch, that probably makes sense, but I'm sure there's also data on that. I'm sure it's well studied. Yeah. But then you look at, I'm just playing devil's advocate slightly. I work one more day a week. I'd rather work one more hour a day, but do it from the comfort of my own home with no commute either side of it, with the ability at lunch to throw on the telly or make like an actual nice meal, as opposed to fighting over the microwave with all of me scruffy colleagues that don't clean it out after they use it. So I know we're talking about burnout, which is something specific here, but maybe there is pros and cons. Maybe I'd want to work that little bit longer to be able to work from home as well.
No, I get that. And by the way, here in the US, a record number, 4.5 million people quit their jobs in November alone. Damn, that's a lot. That's a lot, man.
But
4.5. They're calling it the Great Resignation.
So
I'm out of here.
I've seen this, and I've seen data that also shows that 4.5 million people got new jobs in November. So that counterbalanced with how many new roles were either created or people changed or swapped. Because if you quit your job, if you work for a decent company, they're going to refill it in the same period of time, aren't they? Or a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, I'm looking here real quick because I think there's 100 million jobs that are left unfilled. Here's an article by Effie. Pandemic wiped out 100 million jobs in 2021. Just as a commentary here. And I remember seeing this, that there's 100 million people out of the workforce. 100 million people. Here's another article from last year as well. So I don't know how up to date these numbers are, but it's interesting to know. But the reason I highlight this article, Will, is that, this hustle mentality, right? Millennials, that's been their word, right? It's all about the hustle, the rise and the grind, rise and grind, rise and grind. And us older folk are sitting back going,
whoa. You just did inverted commas.
Wait for it. What's it? Wait for it.
As if it wasn't true. As if we're the same age. I'm about that.
So, and all I did was I just sat back and said, yeah, go ahead, hustle, man. It's not like it's different. I like when young people, millennials, talk about, man, it's all about the hustle and grind. Like, really, man? So you guys invented hustle? I don't think so. But I think it's interesting though that, this part of this burnout is people overworking. But I also think, the whole, the massive reset, the pause by the pandemic has caused people just to reevaluate where they're at right now.
I agree. And to touch on this point, I think people have different and not necessarily correct, how to describe it, like goals and aspirations. So I go, and I can also, for everyone listening, I can see that maybe my microphone might be popping in and out, so I apologize for that. We can get it fixed for the next week's episode. So if it is popping in and out, I apologize. I go on Instagram driving Ferraris. I see this, I see that. Obviously, I can choose not to go on there, which is what I do. But I think there's a generational difference between people think, well, I can hustle and grind and achieve that, which some people can. Some people just inherently are never going to get there because there's only so many Ferraris, there's only so many Rolexes, there's only so many $200 million houses out there. I've seen Instagram profiles where people are like to become a billionaire. No one, you, I, and probably is going to become a billionaire, Victor Antonio, just because of earning that kind of money, right? So perhaps a generational difference here between people assume, and I like to be optimistic, I like to think that anything is possible, but people are led to believe, and through marketing and advertising and everything else as well, which is now relentless, whereas when you were growing up, the advertising clearly wasn't as relentless as what it is now, that if they just hustle, if they get down, if they work, it's the whole Gary Vee thing of you do your job and then you have your side hustle, 6 till 11, you get less sleep, you just keep doing it for years and years, and you are guaranteed to win. And obviously that's not the case. And I think that's where some of this backlash against hustle culture comes along, where maybe, tell me if I'm right or wrong, maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe the average person didn't have aspirations to do all that. They wanted to come home, spend time with the family, watch sport. I don't know, whatever it is. I'm being very.
It was the same. I think it was the same. I was watching this Google talk by Robert Greene. And Robert Greene wrote the 48 Laws of Power and wrote a new book called The Laws of Human Nature. And in there he talked about, and I can't really remember, but it was like a Sumerian tablet that was dated 1000 BC, and he read it, and he said, and it said something to the effect that today's youth are godless, evil, lazy, and they'll never be able to preserve our culture. And what his point was, they said this in 1000 BC, right? And he called it generational narcissism. Is that your generation, you're like, nobody's ever going to be as good as us, and nobody will ever be better than us. And I think we're just repeating the same thing. So I think I am optimistic that millennials, does that really include you, Will?
Yeah.
Are you a millennial?
Yeah, I'm 35. I'm at the top end of it, but I am a millennial.
Okay, a little defensive there, but that's okay.
So I can't be defensive over. We'll touch on this in a second, but you can't be defensive over data and numbers. Millennials is people in the age range. I'm within that age range.
That's correct. So Will, I got to ask, what did you stir up on LinkedIn? What did you stir up on LinkedIn?
Let me throw, and we can see the impact of a humble LinkedIn poll. So what? I posted this 2 days ago. It's had 104 pretty much 1,000 views in the feed. 1,400 people have voted on this. And I'll give you a bit of context, Victor Antonio. We have now just had just over 10,000 salespeople do our sales code assessment. Sometimes it's always within our training product, but then sometimes we put it out for free to generate leads for the business and to do things and to gather data. And I thought it'd be interesting to look at some of the polarity within the data of successful people, less successful people, people who are struggling. We cover 12 traits. People different traits, right? We look at male, female, disclosed. We look at age. We look at all kinds of things, and the data is the data. It's in there. It's as valid as what people want to include within it, but there's no reason to. You're not going to share the results of anyone. There's no. You can't paste it online or anything, or get a badge to show or anything. So I would hesitantly suggest that the data is relatively accurate. Because again, you're not trying to, it's not like a corporate one where you're trying to do it to impress your boss. And so you might lie and manipulate the data to make you look like a better sales candidate, for example, when you are being approached for a job. So I just very flippantly, literally as flippantly as this, put a poll on LinkedIn. Who's better at selling, men or women? In hindsight,
by the way, so can you read some of it? Because some of it's very small. So can you read some of it very quickly?
Yeah, but so I'm trying the premise of it slightly here. And the reason I did this, and again, flippantly threw out there, was because we've got a podcast coming up in 2 weeks from now. We've got from a large sales technology company who has obviously way more data than what I'll ever collect. They've got interesting data on this as well. And gender is irrelevant to this conversation, but it's just a starting point to look through the aspects of assertiveness, people pleasing, optimism, all these kind of different traits that do somewhat determine your likeliness of success in a B2B sales role. So I put it up. I put, who is better at selling, men or women? I'm working on some real for an upcoming podcast episode, but I'd love to include, quote, some LinkedIn says silly opinions in the opening. Victor, knowing damn well are gonna just be stupid about this. And I didn't want to trip anyone up, right? I didn't want to offend anyone.
I love the way you're not fighting human nature. You're going with human nature. Well done. Well done.
I put it there. Opinions in the opening, knowing that the data, nobody reads the terms and conditions of what they're signing up for, or the products that they're buying.
Yeah, they get all jacked up, right? They read a little bit. It's like
so. Of course. Now there was, as I said, there's 1,400 votes. Women came out top massively here, 67% versus 33%, and 1,000 or what are we on? 300 odd comments, and there's a few, and I think I should probably share. There was one, Victor, and this is going to not show up very well on the screen, so I'll read it out. But there was one that I some of these comments, Victor. So this one is,
go ahead, read them.
Will Barron. Actually, there's a lot of sexism. Actually, there is a lot sexist about data. Do your research before throwing out such a statement. Are you aware that data is also racist?
Oh, really?
Did you know, Victor?
I didn't know that.
The data.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
That's how it's collected, how it's inferred, how it's described, how it's portrayed. But no. Data inherently sexist. I didn't know that a number was inherently anything, Victor. So I replied to this.
Math is racist.
So I replied to this.
Math
is racist, ... That's like saying, and this is what I was doing at the moment in time. That's like saying that me looking out my window right now and I count one garden, that's my study. And saying that symbol, number one, hates minorities. That's how stupid it is. So the reason I wanted to include this on today's episode was just to have of it. Clearly I could have perhaps done a different poll. I could have labeled things more politically correct. There could have been a option of undisclosed gender, other gender, whatever it is. Fine, appropriate. But none of the comments say that. All the comments call me a racist, sexist, just for posing the question. When again, it was just a flippant question to tee up a podcast episode that we're doing on the subject.
I just want to be clear. I mean, so let's really answer Tori Elstrom's concerns here. I think she's confusing. We're conflating two different things here. And one is that is data, information in and of itself, or numbers, let's just say that. Let's keep it straight numbers, inherently racist. Now, how the data is collected, one could assume that has a lot of biases, right? That's where a lot of the bias comes in. Even AI algorithms have come out to be biased. That's one of the biggest concerns in AI is that sometimes the programmer can program some biases by weighting different factors or variables. But to say that data the intent of collecting data is always to try to draw some conclusion to what's being studied, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's inherently racist. Do you know what I mean? It is to provide some type of awareness, some type of insight into what's going on. But it isn't. So if it's racist, to me, that implies that's going to be used against somebody.
No, it was just that word that got my back up. And there was tons of just stupid comments, right? But to say something is inherently something when it is a symbol on a page is not true. Humans could be inherently one thing or another. If your upbringing was a certain way, your the people you spent time with believed certain beliefs, they at a certain level, inherently some of that may rub off on you. But now we're way beyond a LinkedIn poll, and now we're going down a rabbit hole where you need actual experts to debate it, because some of it is a grey area. Now, a LinkedIn poll is not a grey area. There's only two choices. It's either one or the other. Again, maybe there could have been other choices on there that would have been more politically correct, more appropriate in the moment. But yeah, there's a ton of people in the live chat on this, Victor. Emma says, I commented early on in the poll and then grabbed my popcorn to
I like that person. I like that person. That person I like.
There's one from Keith that I'm not going to read.
Oh, read it. Just bleep where you need to bleep, man. No. Just bleep where you need to bleep.
Misogynistic and not appropriate for this show. There's a couple down here. And with that,
don't.
You're watching it on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever. We're going to do a section in a second where we're going to run through some of your audience questions. If you've got any questions about the content, B2B sales, or you want to learn a dog and the electronic bike and the dog's little helmet, do leave a comment below and we'll jump into them. But yeah, Victor, anything else to add to that, mate, before we move on to the next topic?
You should do more polls just to really just torque people up. I think people just... we're just going overboard. I mean, of course, any piece of data you look at, anybody can skew it one way or another, right? You know, if you got one dog in your backyard, the cat's going to say, well, that's a little sexist. You know, I guess animalist. I guess what would it be? I don't know. You know, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. I mean, it's an informal survey. And by the way, I'm not surprised that women came out on top. I'm not surprised because I think, you know, and this is me, no data, totally being a sexist comment here coming your way, is that women seem to be more empathetic, have better listening skills. And in today's market, I think that is one of the ingredients to being a better salesperson. Aside from all, you know, the hustle, outreach, and all that, I think a big component today is relationship. And I think women are just a little better at that, I think, sometimes, as far as connecting than men. So, but I wouldn't say one is necessarily better than the other. I've seen men who can get in touch with their feminine side, right? And I can see women who can be very aggressive when they need to be.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a sneak peek on the results of the data that we collected, and again, this is in collaboration with. I'm not naming the sales technology brand at the moment because they might pull out of the podcast. This getting so much traction. Hopefully they won't, and if they do, we will mention them for being cowards, right? But
if they jump out, I mean, come on. I mean, that's the results. By the way, what was the worst? What was the worst comment you got on there? Can you scroll real quick and one that just kind of?
We're not giving
but a respect
to idiots.
No. Here's what I'm looking for: a comment that provided some insight that you didn't think of. I'm not talking about being, you know, rude or anything else, like something that was like, oh, you know, that's an interesting point.
There was a chap, I'm sorry, I forget your name. He dropped me a message. You will have to comment with some research from on the subject of sales performance in between men and women in the corporate environment from the 70s, and then back is like a meta study versus a study in the 70s versus a study in 2005. He posted some comments on that. I think he did his dissertation at university on the differences and the benefits and the different things going on. And he said the data that we've got, we should give it to like a university. So I'm in contact with Leeds University in the business school here on the back of this. He reckoned that the university, some undergrads, it might be some useful data for them to go through. So maybe not a full dissertation, but some work that they can do some, original data and studying on. So as I said, I'm in touch with the Leeds University, the business school there, and maybe this will become more validated or less validated on the back of kind of what they can pull out from it, and hopefully give some kids some interesting insights to look at that they otherwise won't get access to. So there you go. There's a couple of interesting posts and comments like that.
Yeah, I think it's worth highlighting that, this is a univariate poll, if I can be so mathematical about this, which means we're only looking at male or female. A real study to really understand what makes a great salesperson would be more multivariate, where you look at multiple variables. So again, this is just a 1 degree view of what might be going on, but it's nothing to get all worked up about, I think.
Dude, but I don't understand why people get worked up about anything. I think people don't. I'm going to go deep here for a second.
Go ahead, man.
I don't think people know how short life is. And I'm not religious. My belief is that you die, you go into like a ditch, and then that's it. And hopefully you get remembered for a generation or two if you've done something with your life. And then 99% of people don't get remembered any further than that. That's all it is. People who spend time battling with each other online, commenting, it's fine to have strong opinions on views of things that you care about, but why try and convince someone? Because this is me. I just blocked the comments on and the notifications on LinkedIn after like the first 12 hours. I've not seen all the comments. I've not got time to go through them, right, and debate them. I may have prodded the embers a little bit at first to get some conversation going, but I just turned them off. So hundreds and hundreds of people are commenting, spending time here, trying to convince people and myself that may have beliefs, insights, thoughts that they are right or wrong. Just go and do something useful, because you've not got much of this time left. That's like my hot take on all of this, and things like this just remind me of that.
It's amazing how emotional people get. By the way, speaking of free speech, how's that for a segue? Let's talk about Joe Rogan opening up a Getter account. Now, Getter is going to be I'm going to think it's going to be maybe the next Twitter, and so Joe Rogan moves over to this new platform called Getter. And here's what he says. On June 2nd, and here's what his quote. Here's his quote. "Just in case shit over at Twitter gets even dumber, I'm here now as well. Rejoice." Now, what's interesting is that within 3 days of him moving over to Getter, because Joe Rogan is quite the influencer. In fact, if you look at his numbers, he's outdoing all the major news networks. We're talking Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, just killing everybody. He comes over to Getter, and all of a sudden, I think he's almost at 9 million subscribers in 4 days.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's an amazing number, 4 million subscribers. And here's where the fear came in. And if you can put that article up again, the new Twitter CEO raises free speech worries. It's an article by Connor Skelding and John Levine. In a 2018 interview, Agrawal said Twitter should focus less on thinking about free speech, but thinking about how the times have changed, which I get. And he went on, and so increasingly, our role at Twitter is moving towards how we recommend content and how we direct people's attention. And this comes on the heel of, again, some conservatives being deplatformed and some doctors being deplatformed for saying things that don't agree with, general consensus. So I think Joe Rogan's going to Getter for Plan B, just in case.
I've asked you about this before, Victor, and you did not give me a satisfactory answer, right?
All right.
My question to you was, if you want platforms like this to not be able to just ban people, to not be able to even shadow ban people, so that people think that their comments are out in the ether, in the open, but they're really not. They're hidden away. The seamless way to do it is to make it a utility. So you can't just turn off the electricity at someone's house because they are, to use an extreme example, they are in the Ku Klux Klan or something crazy, right? Which obviously most people would think is just stupid. But you can't turn off the electricity to it. And I asked you whether we should treat these platforms as utilities in the same way, and you said no. Free market capitalist world. These companies should be able to do what they want. Competitors can pop up and fill in the gaps and the voids. Is that do you still believe that to be true, that these companies should not be regulated?
Yes. It should not be regulated, because who decides? It always comes back to the question, who decides? And so again, I think ideas, the marketplace of ideas there are people who are going to buy into it, people who are not going to buy. And I think those ideas that are not popular will continue to decline. One of the arguments people have here is that, who determines, for example, COVID, there's so much misinformation out there, right? And so one can make the argument that, well, Victor, that's a perfect example of what's happening. There's a lot of misinformation by other people who are, starting their own platforms. Well, but then again, there's also misinformation coming from the government, coming from the CDC, and if it's not misinformation, at least it's conflicting or they're changing opinions. And so who determines? Do you know what I mean? And in a free market of ideas, just like in capitalism, this has to kind of ebb and flow. And I like to believe that people eventually are smart enough. The people who really are critical thinkers will figure out what news sites, what channels, what platforms are giving out BS versus those who are giving out great information. I guess I truly believe in the ideas will die that are not popular, that people will not accept. And I also believe in the idea that if you decide to regulate something like this, who decides? Do you create a star chamber? Some guys and gals in the back room going, all right, what are we going to agree on this week? Okay, what do we like?
Well, no,
what do we don't like?
that's the point, Victor. That's what's happening right now. Twitter employ students, some of this work on their behalf to censor things, because obviously some things are, if you're inciting violence on Twitter and it's against the law, it's illegal, so they have to remove that. But what's happening right now is people who work for these companies are making these decisions, versus if it was a utility, there would be a blanket statement of, hey, you can't just cut someone off, you can't just do this and this. As opposed to there will be no censoring, so there'll be more trash out there, but then you're allowing people to make their own informed choices on things, as opposed to just, well, we don't like this person, we don't like this message, but get rid of it.
Yeah.
There's no.
I was looking up this up.
I think it's an interesting discussion, though.
Yeah, I'll end with this one. I think it's interesting. Like in December, Facebook, there's an article here out in the New York Post, and you can read it. It's on different news channels. Facebook had to admit the truth that fact checks are really just opinions, because they were under oath. So they finally had to admit, because a guy by the name of John Stossel is bringing a lawsuit against them, and now under oath they have to admit, like, okay, well, who are these fact checkers? Because apparently he put up something, John Stossel, and it was legitimate, and he was taken down. And so they're now asking, okay, well, tell me how you do fact checking. And at the end they had to kind of tap out Facebook and said, you know what, they're really people who have opinions. And I think that's the scary part, Will. I
agree. I think it is scary. I don't know the answer. Obviously, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be sat on a podcast with you, Victor, debating this. We'd be in the Senate or the Houses of Parliament, sharing our subject matter experts on this. But the reason, so I don't like to get political on the show. I don't care about politics in general. Like anything I say is just my opinion.
Not really interested either.
There's no like political affiliation with anything that I ever say. I just don't care about it. But the reason why I put some of this in the doc, and the reason why I'm intrigued to some of it, is it affects B2B salespeople, because we could very, very quickly go down a rabbit hole and be in a position where cold emails, cold calls, outreach, anything like that is just banned. Just done. You annoy me, you're out of here. It wouldn't be a difficult sell to put some kind of law, policy, something in place that bans cold email and bans cold calls. Because we've all had spammy cold calls that are really annoying. Obviously, like robo-dials in the UK and different technology and tools have been banned outright in general, especially for the business-to-consumer marketplace. B2B is obviously different. Be somewhat scary to salespeople when, and again, take all political elements out of all this. I don't care about any of this stuff. But when different people are being censored, different people are being deplatformed, what happens as a salesperson if LinkedIn is your main lead generation tool and you get back? You're knackered. Your career could just go in sales. The past years, and you're all your hard work just goes down the toilet, all because his opinion. I think that's insane.
Yeah, I think, you're bringing up a good point, Will, is that, because I've seen salespeople do this, is that they try to hide their political opinions through an article that they share, right? And the article will have
passive aggressive posting.
Right? Yeah, passive aggressive posting. And then some people are just outright get all aggressive when they read one of your posts, and then they just go all in on your post, right? With their comments, and all of a sudden they reveal themselves. And I think this is I don't know, what do you call that? A clarion? It's like a warning that before you post something on there, especially on LinkedIn, let's talk sales in LinkedIn. Be very careful, because you have become the personal brand of your company, and everything you post reflects who you are. And I think in order to maintain some form of neutrality, not left, not right, is that you have to really kind of be very conscious to not post things that may have one leading versus another leading. And I've learned this, over the years. That's why I refuse to put any post that may be viewed as one or another. And I've really restricted. I can't tell you how many times I started to write a response, right? Have you done this, Will? You just type in, you're like, okay, let me respond to this. And then after I write it, I just delete the whole thing and I go, done. I'm not doing that. So this is a warning to folks to kind of, be careful what you play with.
Yep. And that's coming from someone who owns his own company and can basically say what he wants, right? If you are working for a big corporate, I think we're in maybe 10 years from now, this changes, but I think we've all got to be somewhat, I hate even saying that we have to be careful what we say. You should be, unless you're a complete idiot. If you're an idiot, you should be careful what you say. If you're just an average person and I guess what the point I'm making here, Victor, is, and we can wrap up this section of the show with this. If you're right? If you're bigoted and you refuse to change opinions depending on if there's solid evidence one way or the other in front of you, then you should probably shut up and be careful, because it's likely what you are saying is controversial somewhat. If you're not bigoted, if you're happy to grow, make mistakes, change, then you should be somewhat happy just to chat and talk and communicate. There's plenty, as I said, that LinkedIn post I did, again, maybe there should have been an additional option or a couple of different additional options in there, but it's not an unreasonable question. I wasn't calling anyone out. I wasn't being specific to anyone. Genuinely, there was no malice in it whatsoever. I threw it out there thinking that I'd get a few crazy people commenting, and then we'll use those comments at the beginning of a podcast episode. And I made it very clear of what was going to happen. And then I've edited the post since to make it even more overly clear of the point of things, and people are still commenting on it right now. So
yeah, but the thing is, it's an opinion poll. Let me highlight the word opinion here. It's an opinion poll. That's all it is. It's not something to be taken as fact. The fact that more women got more nominations for better salespeople doesn't I come off that post going, man, women are better salespeople. It's an opinion. And again, anyway, people go off on that stuff. Right. But anyway. Well,
with that, Victor, I want to wrap up the show. We're going to answer a few questions towards the end, but I want to pull up Victor's new Victor. And Matt, I've not got a copy of it yet. I'm still waiting in the post, mate, for a signed copy. But yeah.
Man, I'm sure it was on its way already. Thanks for the reminder, Will. But so Mastering the Upsell is a book. There are not a lot of books on upselling in the market. The only one I could find was written 15, 20 years ago. So I would say that's a little dated. So what I decided to do is really compile a list of different tactics and strategies that you can use to upsell. And I came up with, 20 of them. Also 20 other upsell phrases to start conversations. It's a very tactical book. By that, I mean, it's not a lot of storytelling, maybe 10% story, 90%. Here's how you would use it. And I give different examples from different industries so people can pick and choose the strategy they want. The way it was written is that the first part really kind of sets up why upselling is, I call it the third option, Will. Inbound, outbound, upselling. And I think when you look at upselling, one of the data points I actually refer to in the book is that you can increase your sales by up to 30% by focusing in on existing clients and selling them more. So if you knew that, I think that's a big plus. Also, because you already have the relationship, you have easier access to the customer. Because you have already sold to the customer, your sales cycle is going to be that much shorter. So why wouldn't people take advantage of this? And it's amazing how many salespeople I talked to. I said, what is your upsell cycle? What is your upsell process, rather? And the answer I always get is what? Wait, yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about my upsell process. And I think companies today, because acquiring a new client acquisition cost has gone up. But if you can hit your existing client base and move your numbers up to about 30%, why not do it? So hopefully this book will trigger that conversation within companies to upsell existing clients because it's cheaper, faster, and easier for the salesperson to hit their number.
Yep, amazing. Totally agree with everything you said. I'm looking forward to get mine signed copy in the post, Victor, and then I'll...
You will.
And then I'm interested. Victor, out of all the books you've published, because how many books have you published? How many books are on Amazon now?
14. I don't have them all on Amazon, but 14 books I have.
Do you have like a baby? Do you have the book that you're like, that is the greatest work I've done thus far?
I have 2 books, and I'll split them into 2. On the sales side, Response Block Selling, which it's all about blocking objections, I think is the most valuable sales book, the smallest actually, and the most valuable sales book I've put out. Response Block Selling. Get that one. If you implement that, you're a winner. I don't know if I ever told you about this book. It was one of my first books. It was called The Corporate Inferno. Ever told you about this, Will?
No, I've not come across that.
So the Corporate Inferno, and the subtitle, A Sublime Tragedy. And it's based on Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy of Hell, right? And so it's, to make a long story short, it's a book on leadership and ethics, but told through a story of Dante's Divine Comedy. And so to me, that is my proudest work because it incorporates, basically the premise is this. There's a salesperson who's asked to do something that they shouldn't do, right? Person falls asleep and is guided through the 9 levels of hell, right? Where salespeople go who do bad things to their customers. And in each level of hell, they have different discussions. And what I did is I took archetypes from the market, and they're coded. So if you really study them, like one person was known for moving into a company and they called him Chainsaw Al. I could say his name is Al Dunlap, right? And so he's in like the 7th level of hell, right? Because all he cared about was profit and didn't care about anything else. And he ruined the businesses that he basically, downsized. And so there's 9 levels of hell. So that means there are 9 culprits who do things wrong in corporate America. And it really is a book about philosophy/ethics. That's my pride and joy. That's my baby.
That was written, Victor Antonio, it was published 13th of January, 2006.
Yep.
That's mad. Yep. That just shows you how much of an OG Victor Antonio really is in this game. and that's a compliment for a change.
What's that?
That's a compliment.
Okay, I'll accept that. Yeah. So that's a good book. So by the way, it's fictional, obviously. So if you love fiction, it's a good book.
Good stuff. Well, let's jump in with some audience questions. Now, I won't pull the questions on the screen because there's some geniuses in here, Victor. There's some less. Our audience isn't it's always the brightest bunch, as politely as I can say it. There's lots of comments, actually. There's far more comments than questions, which is great. Danny says, HubSpot, Salesforce. Danny asks, I'm ruining the question. What TWIS mean? He's a first-time listener, and other people were jumping in there and telling him This Week in Sales, which is good. Hakeem says, now you're good. Being direct when you create content is better than fluff. Chris says, more. Victor Antonio, I love the rants.
Say that? Yeah. I'm just being blunt. I am channeling what people are thinking. And every time I see these press releases, listen here, marketing, I want to send you a message. Work on these press releases. They're junk. They're fluff. I don't get them. Maybe they're not trying to offend anybody. They got to the point where they say nothing because they become so bland. All right, I'll stop. Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
Is it a fair comment, maybe less for salespeople, more for marketers, that if, not necessarily offending someone, but if you're not being somewhat decisive in your marketplace, if some people don't go, I love that, and some people go, that sucks, is that a good for marketing materials?
I think simplicity is the starting point for me.
Sure.
Explaining what something is simply so I can understand it. How many websites have you and I visited, Will, where you read the front page, the home page, and you go, I still don't know. Then you go to the about us, about the product, and you go, I still don't know what you're talking about. And you see this a lot in the technology side. So I like people who are very niche focused, very specific, to the point. Give it to me in one line. What do you do?
Got it. Julian says, I'm getting great results with Einstein, which is Salesforce's AI, I believe, by recording these activities through the sales gates for MBA.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means at the end.
I'm by the way, I'm a Salesforce fan. I mean, I really, so, we may talk about them, but, I'm a fan of Einstein, and I talked about them in the book, Sales Ex Machina.
Hakeem says, hustle culture needs to be taken with a grain of salt. You can run an engine at 100%, but you can complete a Le Mans race with a calculated strategy on when to slow down and speed up. I think that's fair enough. I've changed my viewpoint on success, goals, achievements from when I jumped out of sales into salesman.org, which was once salesman.red. I had 6-month goals, 12-month goals. Now I've got a 5 and 10 year plan. And I feel like I'm going to achieve much bigger things by thinking more long term and going through the from good to great, this idea of the 20-mile march. Do the work every day. You don't have to go 100%. 80% a day for 5 years is much more effective than 110% for 6 months, and then you burn out and it all becomes a mess.
Yeah, can I share this? I'll try to remember this, Will, but it was an anecdote about a minister and a monk. And the minister worked for the king, right? And the minister realized the monk was always eating rice and beans. So he says to the monk, if you learn how to add value, you wouldn't have to eat rice and beans every day. To which the monk responded, if you liked rice and beans, you wouldn't have to work for the king. And I just it's all perspective, how much we want. And people have different value systems. And I love that little anecdote because everybody has what level of happiness, income they need to generate the happiness they want. So, and it's hustle at your own level.
What's the word? Hedonic adaptation, right? I think that's the right word. I might be pronouncing it incorrectly. Where
I think it's hedonic.
Hedonic adaptation. Where at 16, all I wanted was a drum kit that I could play where the neighbors wouldn't moan at me.
Right.
Obviously that's resolved, done. I've got a nice detached house now. I don't know if I told you this. I don't think I've shared this at all. I got a drum kit in December, Victor. It's
nice.
Really expensive electronic drum kit. Too expensive, but I nearly swore then. I thought, sod it, Victor. I'm treating myself, and I've been playing it every day. I've been really enjoying it, and
good for you. Good for you. I told you I bought an electric bike, right? We talked about this.
We talked about
my rad electric bike. That was my splurge of the year.
Are you getting out on it still?
Oh yeah, I take my little dog, my little Pebbles on the ride. I put a bike rack with a basket in the back, so I take her out for a little ride.
We need some live streamed video for the intro of the outro of one of these shows of Victor Antonio going along with Pebbles, the sausage dog.
I will commit to recording something for you, okay, eventually.
We'll do that. We'll run it next week. And with that, Victor, I think we should wrap up there, mate. There's tons of comments. We can't go through them all. Anything that we haven't covered that I'll look back through. If there's any good questions, we'll include them in next week's episode of This Week in Sales. Victor, anything else you want to wrap up on, mate, before we leave it there?
No, we do have a workshop coming out at the end of the month. It's called Client Says, which is all about objections, blocking objections, and overcoming objections. So go to victorantonio.com if you're interested in the 3-hour masterclass that I am holding. I think you'll enjoy it. That's it.
Very good. I'll link to that in the show notes to this episode over at thisweekinsales.com, which we haven't plugged in any of the episode. We've not linked to any of the articles that
they didn't even know what this meant. No. They didn't even know what this meant.
So and we'll speak with you again on This Week in Sales.